screen, okay. Okay, here's the presentation.
Fantastic. It works.
It worked.
Great.
Okay.
Achla. Okay. So you
Couple
can
more
stop
minutes.
share for now, and then when you get started, start resharing.
Okay.
Great.
Now, who's on this call besides my sister?
Elizabeth
see.
Roach-Block.
Judy Hanson Childs. Elizabeth
Robert
Geller. Oh, Liz Geller.
Hello.
And Sid Geller.
Bob Rosenthal is on.
I
Right.
don't see him. He knows more than I do, I think, about, he's not about the Sefer Torah, but about our family. He's
He's done
a,
some of those ancestry studies too, hasn't
his grandmother was William Levine's sister, so his mother is our first cousin.
he? Oh, boy. There's not going to be a quiz, is there, afterwards?
Sarah, his mother is William Levine's sister. Or
Oh,
his grandmother, William Levine's sister.
that's Julie's grandfather, Rachel.
Okay. That's Julie's grandfather. So that would also be Bill Alphon's grandfather as well?
Yes,
Okay.
Vivi Alphon's father.
Got it.
Bibi Alphon is our first cousin.
Yep.
How's everything in Israel, Bob?
Good.
Everybody okay?
We're the test case of the vaccine, you know, they're gonna have the whole country vaccinated sometime in March.
Wow.
And we're a small
Really?
country, so then they'll study us. It's good. We're good
Have
for
you
that.
had both shots, Bob?
I'm getting my second one on Thursday.
Oh,
Now, who is this?
Marilyn Levin.
Marilyn Levin
Yeah.
Sefcovic.
Sefcovic. Yeah.
Sefcovic.
Yeah.
And
Welcome.
Sylvia.
Maynard Levin's daughter.
Oh, wow. How did you get wind of this?
What?
How did you hear about this?
Oh, Eric, through Eric. I live in California.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I woke up at 7 o'clock here. That's it.
So
I'm still in bed.
Maynard is our first cousin.
Pardon me?
So your father is our first cousin.
Yes.
Did
Mhm.
you know about the Sefer Torah?
No, I had no idea.
Oh, yeah, your
We're in-
your grandparents brought it.
I know. Who, my grandfather? Julius was my great grandfather.
Let's see.
Abraham was my grandfather.
Your grandfather,
His son.
yeah, yes, your great grandparents. Our grandparents.
Mhm.
Fred Levine has joined.
And Rachel
What
Levine
else
is
is
also
mine?
on. We're going to give it 2 more minutes because people are still
Okay.
signing on.
All right.
And
So
Judy,
how long have you been in California?
Oh my God, for over 40 years now.
And where?
San Jose,
San Jose.
in a place called Los Gatos.
Okay,
Oh,
And,
Sheila has joined.
the Bay Area.
yeah, and I used to live in Mexico City.
Oh,
Maryland.
Yeah,
This is Liz Geller. I have a cousin in Los Gatos.
really?
Yeah, wait a minute. Yeah, let me look up the address. It's right here. Yeah. My cousin Dan Aroney, apparently they live on a mountain. They live on Outer Zayante Road.
Oh, I know. My daughter lives right above them. They
Really?
live in Ben Lomond. Yeah.
Okay, so it's my cousin Dan and his wife Carol Aroney.
Arany?
Aronie, Aaron, Aaroni.
My gosh, I should get their telephone number.
I've got it right here.
God, I haven't got a pencil. Oh, yes, I do.
She lives in Los Gatos, California. She's a cousin.
Well, I'll let you guys exchange info and then we'll get started.
Okay, so
You can send it by chat.
Oh, that's a good
Oh,
idea.
yeah, right. Good
Okay,
idea.
what's-
Melissa and Israela have joined.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know if I can. let me
I'll
see.
do it.
Oh, yeah, I can do it just to you. Okay.
Yeah. All right, everybody, welcome. Shavua Tov. It's so good to see everyone here to discuss an important part of our congregation's history. So some of you might know me, some of you might not. I'm Rabbi Rachel Isaacs. I'm the rabbi at Beth Israel Congregation in Waterville, Maine. And I am also the Dorothy Bibi Levine Alfond Assistant Professor of Jewish Studies at Colby College, which is relevant to the topic at hand today because what we are going to be discussing is the story of the Levine family Sefer Torah that often at Beth Israel is just called our little Torah, that we dance with on Simchas Torah, that we pull out on Shavuos. But as time goes on and as the synagogue grows, I want to make sure that there's still an awareness and a knowledge of the fact that things at Beth Israel Congregation are historically rooted in a way that few things in much of the American Jewish community is. So I grew up in a suburban congregation in New Jersey where most people joined a congregation a few years after they moved to a new town. And so there was nothing that really had long-standing historical roots in the synagogue building or in terms of our Sefer Kodesh, our holy books, or our Klei Kodesh, the holy objects in our congregation. That's not true at Beth Israel Congregation, where practically every element, every piece of Jewish life that exists within our sanctuary is connected to the founding families of our synagogue and has a history that is at least 100 years old, if not older. And that is part of the treasure and one of the things that makes Beth Israel so special, that whether it is the chest plates that are on our Sefer Torah, whether it's the Sefer Torah themselves, the Torah scrolls themselves, everything has a strong familial history that connects us back to 1902, if not earlier, to the founding families of our synagogue. And I just want to tell one quick story and then introduce Robert or Abi Levine, as many of you know him, who will be our speaker today, which is one of the things that I fell in love with when I first came to Beth Israel was the deep sense of history and place that everything in our synagogue had, specifically in regard to the holy objects that live in our ark. And I think it was 2 years ago at this point, I was at a Shiva call for Fred Tannenbaum, who did the stained glass of the foyer of our synagogue. And somebody came up to me and he said, I just want to let you know, he said, I'm not Jewish, I'm Franco-American, but it was my father who did all of the woodworking for your sanctuary. And it makes me so proud every time I pass by the synagogue on Main Street to know that my father was the one that carved and made the synagogue so beautiful. So, you know, there's this interlocking historical mosaic in Waterville that not only connects us to our founding families, but also the multi-generational Lebanese and Franco-American families that makes Beth Israel really different than a lot of other American Jewish institutions that I think is really special. And I've heard many stories about the Levine family Sefer Torah, but by no means do I know the entire story. And so we're really going to the source, which is Abi Levine, who will be talking to us about the story of this Sefer Torah that not only connects Waterville, Maine to Boston and to the old country in Eastern Europe, but also, I'm sure he'll get to this at the end, both at the beginning and the end, to the land of Israel, right? So it's a great Jewish story in that it connects us throughout much of the global diaspora, right back to our little synagogue in Waterville, Maine. So without any further ado, I want to hand it over to you, Abi, to tell us about the really special and in some ways miraculous story of how we are all graced to have that Sefer Torah as part of our Jewish life.
Okay, one question. Who was the Franco-American family that did the woodwork?
I have to admit, I don't remember.
Probably went to high school with one of them. Okay, so we're going to have a little PowerPoint show here. Here it is. Okay. Everybody on board?
Excellent.
Okay. So in fact, there were two Sefer Torah from the Levine family that we're going to talk about. Let's see. So just as a way of Jewish background, where we all are coming from, it was after the destruction of the first base of Mikdash in 423 BCE, that Jews were exiled first from our land and lived mainly in Babylonia, Babel, which now is Iraq and Iran. And 70 years later, miraculously, a small proportion, 43,000 of many, many more, not everybody, moved back to Israel. And there was the construction of the second base of Mikdash by Ezra and his team. And then that persisted for, I think, 400 years or so. And then it was destroyed again in 17 Common Era. And subsequent to that, Jews have been living all over the world. So according to Yahva Eliach, who wrote this book that once was a world and who's responsible for the photo gallery at the Holocaust Museum, Jews have been living in Eastern Europe for about 900 years. And presumably some of our ancestors were among those. In fact, Eliach, she lived in a town called Ezeshak, and it's very close to where our grandparents came from, namely Divinishak. In fact, she gave a talk at our local synagogue when I was in Brookline, and she mentioned that her grandfather was the rabbi in Divinishak for some period of time. But so at least since 1880 and probably long before that, the Levines were living in this village of this shtetl of Divinishak, which is about 20 miles south of Vilna in Lithuania. This is a map of Lithuania. You can see it's between Poland and Russia, and then White Russia, Belarus. Here's a blow up. You can see the arrow is pointing to where Divinishak is, and Vilna, here on the map is called Vilnius, is a few miles north west of Divinishak. And here in this map is actually, you see Divinishak is this little, today's map, it's in a little outpocketing, I don't know why, of Lithuania, and right on the border with Belarus. And the reason I have the map this way is that Divinishak is here, where our grandparents are from, and our other set of grandparents, my maternal grandparents, are not too far away in a place called Krasna, where I'm pointing to here. And some of you might be familiar with this city here called Volozhin, where there was a famous yeshiva. So the survivors of Divinishak wrote a book called Sefer Divinishak, which I have. And this is a picture of the front of the book and the book plate. And in it, they have a map of the city as they remembered it. And this is that map. There's a small shtetl. And here was the center of town. Here was I don't know what proportion was Jewish, a large proportion was Jewish. And this is all the Jewish buildings. I think 7 is Beis HaMerkaz. So 7 is the bathhouse, and the rabbi's house was 1, because that's 1, and the Beit Sefer is 4, and I think one of these is a shul. So in 2004, this daughter of mine was living in, was spending the year in Israel, and as part of that year, they did a March of the Living and went to Poland mostly, but we we went with them and spent an extra week going into Lithuania, where, among other places, we visited Divinishok. So here it is to the town sign of the entrance. This was in March. Here's a street scene, not uncommon, a horse-drawn cart. The only thing different than than probably when my grandparents left is that now they have pneumatic tires. And this is myself, my wife, and this daughter standing in the village square that was on the previous map. So probably related to pogroms, 3 things: pogroms, which were, here we go, which were large-scale waves of anti-Jewish riots that swept through southwestern Russia, present-day Ukraine and Poland from 1881 to 1884. The second factor was very restrictive laws imposed upon the Jews called the May Laws of 1882. And the Russian official goal that was, quote, a third of Jews will be converted, a third will emigrate, and a third and the rest will die of hunger. So in 1883, my grandfather's first cousin, William Levine, emigrated to the United States at the age of 18. My grandparents followed in about 1887, and they had with them 4 children. Both my grandparents had been previously married with children. My grandfather, then at age 38, had 3 children, and my grandmother, then age 31, had 1 children. And with them, they brought this small Sefer Torah. My grandparents had their first child together, my Aunt Eva, on December 21, 1887, in Boston, and they living at that time on Canal Street. In 1889, also in Boston, William Levine married my grandfather's oldest child, my Aunt Sarah. That's Bibi's mother, so mother and father. By 1892, my grandparents had moved their family to Waterville and had their second child, my father, Louis Lester Levine, which they called him Laser Lave. Here is a picture of my father with his parents. I estimate it was about 1930. And again, my grandfather died in 1934, and my father bought a large Sefer Torah and donated it to the Waterville Shul in his memory. And this is a picture of me at Ben Gurion Airport, in the airport in Israel, where I brought the small Sefer Torah. I borrowed it because my grandson here is going to be bar mitzvah just after Purim on March 6th. And we had hoped that the Sefer Torah could be used, but we had it checked in Boston, and the sofa there was equivocal, whether it could be repaired. And so we brought it here and got another opinion and was told that it was beyond repair. So it will be returned the next time one of us flies back to Boston. But that is the story of the small Sefer Torah and the large Sefer Torah. Now, can I continue with the video now? I guess so.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's see how I do that. Okay, that's not it. Oh, here we go. So, sorry, this one. So in 1985, when my father was 93 years old, he was intermittently lucid, and they happened to be lucid this time at my sister's camp on Snow Pond. And we had available a video camera, and this is a clip of it. So I'm going to play this clip, a part of it. You can see the whole thing if you want. I will put it on the chat. So let's see, I first make it full screen.
And also make sure end the share of the PowerPoint and restart the share with the video, Abby.
You sure?
Yeah.
You don't see the video now?
No.
No? Okay, so I'll stop share. Okay, then I share again.
Yeah, share again and then choose the video as what you share.
Okay. Find it. Here it is. Share. Okay. You
There we
see it
go.
now? Okay,
Yep,
here we go.
perfect.
So this is a 1-minute clip.
Skipped the country and came to America. Everybody in those days was fleeing away from Russia because they had conscription. Everybody had to serve.
And did they bring a Torah with them? The
Yeah.
Jewish scroll?
Brought a Torah, and we have the Torah now in the shul. The first Torah one of them had, and it's in the shul now.
Did they have any trouble getting it out of the country when it came to the border?
Well, you had to smuggle it in.
And when they arrived in America,
You kept it at home, and we used to have shul meeting every Saturday in different homes before we had a shul. And they moved my father's Torah from one house to another for the services. They had it as the oldest Torah there was in this vicinity.
when your mother and father arrived in Ellis Island from the boat,
Okay, so that's that clip. And hold on. There's another clip here. From Rabbi Goldstein, who was a Waldorf rabbi. He'll tell you when.
Gerald Goldstein. I was a former rabbi of Waterville, Maine from, I believe, 1961 to probably 1965. I remember very vividly Louis Lester Levine and his family, very prominent members of the community. And I remember often Louis Lester telling me about that small Sefer Torah that his mother brought from Europe under her garments, claiming she was pregnant. And that.
So, and one more clip. Back to this one. I gotta go 1830. Okay, full screen.
also contribute to making a living by taking in borders.
They used to come to my home, different men from Augusta and Gardner, used to deal in junk. And they had a horse and team. And we had a stable on Chaplain Street where I lived. And they paid for care, their own care for the night, and also for food for the horse and team. And mother worked, did everything she could to contribute to the support of the family. And that's how they were able to get by. Always worked for themselves.
In the basement, of your house, did they have a mikvah, a ritual bath?
Oh yeah, mother had a mikvah in our basement, and they were more religious then than they seem to be now. And they'd come from Augusta and Gardner and Waterville and surrounding towns, and every month they'd come for the mikvah, and mother used to take care of that. And they used to pay for that. That just helped contribute to support.
Did your mother and father used to go to?
So that's my presentation.
Wonderful, Abby. Thank you so much for that story. It brings such richness. And, you know, the large Sefer Torah we read every year on the high holidays, and it's extraordinarily heavy. So we always make sure that one of the Jewish football players, is in charge of Hagba. You know, thank God every year I've been here, there's been one member of the Colby football team who's Jewish and comes on the high holidays. But that's also an important part of our religious life. Now, Abi, can I ask you a few questions? It sounded like he was talking about a mikveh in a basement. Did I?
Yeah, I understand that my grandparents had a mikveh in their basement.
Where was that?
22 Chaplain Street. No longer, it's been torn down. But it was, you know what Chaplain Street is?
Right off Upper Main.
Where Main Street crosses the railroad tracks coming from the center of town, it's your first right. So it's very close to the tracks.
All those houses are torn down.
Yeah. My father actually owned that property. My father owned several properties. Several of them were right in that area.
He was born in
That
the
neighborhood.
Where was the port of entry? It wasn't Ellis Island. 'Cause
Why
they
not?
came
I don't
before
know.
Ellis Island.
I think it was
I don't
Boston.
know. I haven't been able to find the ship manifest. I did for my father-in-law, but not for, haven't found ours yet.
It wasn't Ellis Island because that didn't open until 1892 or something.
Oh. Oh, well, that's good to know.
They came in through Boston or something like that.
I think they came in from Boston, through Boston.
Well, Eric's write-up said that William came into New York and peddled in New York and on his way to Boston. But I don't really know.
And my grandfather, your uncle, came in, came later after his father.
Oh, really? They didn't come with, so that's wrong. They didn't come with 4 children. How old was he?
He was, I guess he was about 14. He came to escape being
Right, put in the army,
the war. Yeah, the army, whatever. Mhm.
25 years. Oh, well, that's interesting.
Yeah, and you're
well, I
half, I
guess-
think you're half, I don't know if Louis Lester is a full brother or a half brother.
Half brother, that for sure.
So my grandfather came over with John Dutch,
Oh, yeah, right,
who was his younger brother.
right. But Sarah
Maybe-
Sarah at least was there in 1889 because she married William. We have that announcement that it's in the obituary when they were married.
Well, maybe that's when Grandpa came in 1890. I don't know.
No, in 1887, our Aunt Eva was born on Canal Street in Boston. That we know.
Yeah, I remember.
I have that document.
I know that there were, what do you call those, certificates or something from Ellis Island entry that were at the big house, meaning on Taconic Street.
Right.
And my memory, maybe my sister knows better, or maybe somebody has them, maybe at Colby, but my memory is that they were both William and Sarah Levine's entry. They didn't have them all those years. They came later. In other words, they were sent to them later.
Uh-huh.
And I also have a question, Abi, or maybe Rabbi Rachel, maybe you know this, but there's a story about the small Torah being saved in town. I can't remember the word for this, but whatever the word is for like Hebrew school, the something Torah. Whatever the building was, it was right across the street from Taconic Street, where
Right,
William and Sarah Levine.
they had a
The
base
something
measure.
Torah.
They would, the older men would learn every night there.
Exactly. So
Yeah, right across from your grandparents' house.
exactly. So there's a story that there was a fire in that building. And supposedly my dad, Howard Miller, ran across the street, he was young, and grabbed the Torah out of the building. And I am assuming that that's the small Torah that you're talking about, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's the only one they had, I think, until my father bought the second one. Also, Wasn't the fire department right under there? Right under there?
Exactly. That's why the story is so weird. I'm like, why did an 11 or 14-year-old boy have to run across the street to save the Torah when there's a fire department there, you know?
Well, the youngers of Brookline burned down and it backed on the fire on the firehouse.
Yeah.
I guess that's a bad, bad situation.
So I have another question that maybe somebody on this call can answer. So I'm sort of blown away that there was a mikveh in Waterville. I wish it were still here. Now we use Great Pond, which has its pros and its cons. But somebody has asked me on quite a few occasions why there was never a Jewish cemetery established in Waterville. Do any of you know why?
No.
Oh. But that's true. There never was, right, Bob?
Right.
They
And
were
why
very,
they go to Portland.
yeah.
Portland or Bangor. Bangor was a little closer.
But did Waterville people ever use the Bangor cemetery?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I've done burials for Beth Israel members, you know, founding families in Bangor, Portland, and in Auburn.
Right.
Oh, well, in Auburn, that's.
Auburn has a children.
I mean, I don't know if this is true, except I know at least in our family, like they were so serious about the Portland Cemetery. I mean, that place there were so many things. My father used to complain every time we went there. He was like a maintenance person, yelling, calling them to this rolled over and this hasn't been done. I mean, it's in me now, you know, I go to a cemetery and like I get this maintenance voice, you know, but I think what I'm trying to say is I wonder if they just, because their elders were all buried there, they wouldn't even consider burial somewhere else, you know, because like, for instance, in the Levine part of my family, my parents are buried in a different section of the cemetery. And it was a huge discussion for years about whether that was going to be all right. And was it the right place? And did my mother like it? And I mean, I think back on it, I'm like, oh my God, she used to say things like, the view is pretty there. You'll like it there. You know, we're like, really? So I don't know.
I presume maybe it was too small a community when the first people died and they just keep following them. I don't know.
I think you're right.
Yeah. The individual who asked me feels a very deep and strong connection specifically to Waterville and wished that their relative could have been buried in Waterville. So, you know, I just had no response.
You can start one.
We could.
Hi, this is Rachel. I have a question about the Sefer Torah. When your grandparents, Julius and Rachel, brought the Sefer Torah, did they own it as their personal Sefer Torah, or was it from their shul? How did they come to kind of have it in the first place? Don't know.
Nobody knows. Well, I don't know.
I don't know, Rachel.
And we don't, since they both were married before, I know for sure our grandfather was widowed. I presume my grandmother was widowed too. That I don't know for sure. But I don't know to whom. It probably belonged to one or the other. But
What do you mean?
I don't know. It may have belonged to my grandfather. It may have belonged to my grandmother, and they brought it to the marriage. I don't know.
But do you think they had taken it from their synagogue? Do you think, or they had been housing it in their home? Like,
yeah, I think it was a personal synagogue.
personal.
But I don't know. Why
Mm.
would they take it from the synagogue? The synagogue was alive and well. The Vinishak was thriving. I mean, thriving as much as it could, but you know, until the Nazis came, there was a vibrant community there, and that's why that book. These are the people who survived, who wrote up their memories.
Uh-huh.
So I don't
Probably
think
it was
they were
personal.
taking it from a. I don't. You know, again, I don't know. Just surmising.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Wish
The
I
only
had that
story
map.
I knew was about smuggling it in.
Right.
So it
Why
was
did they have to
Rachel who,
smuggle it? Why did they have to smuggle it? Don't
Yeah.
know.
that's what I was going to ask. It was Rachel who put it under her clothes.
Yes.
And so, yeah, that is a question. Why did they have to hide it?
Right.
I don't know, but my father was proud of that part.
Right. I can tell you that I smuggled in the Sefer Torah to Israel because otherwise you'd have to pay customs.
Not a surprise.
So I just mentioned that my niece, Rachel Ann, just spoke, and her name is Razel, which was the same name as my grandmother.
Robert, I'd love a copy of that map of Divinishuk,
Who's talking?
Maryland.
Oh, sure. Send me your email, chat me an email address.
Okay.
I mean, I have the book.
Oh, I would love a copy of the book.
That's
Oh, that I can't
Are
do.
you saying that?
I don't know, I didn't look.
That I can't do, but I don't think it's been digitized. I would mention that when my son was a graduate student at Hebrew University, there was the survivors from Divinishuk and surrounding shtetls would get together once or twice a year, I think. And he attended it once or twice. I'm sure it's, nobody's left, or almost nobody's left. But these were people, our grandparents left 60 years before the Holocaust. So I don't know. There are some Levines in this book, whether our family or not, I have no idea.
Abby, I wonder if I could invite you and some of the other people on this call, what does this Sefer Torah mean to you today and moving forward?
Well, now it's been, at least by this Sefer, has been, now it's just a museum piece, but it's a connection to our family that goes back 140 years or more. And when he told me that we couldn't use it for my grandson, I actually bought a Sefer Torah from him. And now it will be used by my grandson. And we have, at this point, I think five more grandsons who will be able to learn from it. And I hope for multiple generations long after I'm gone. It gives a real connection to the family. And I think it's very nice that it'll be in Waterville for the foreseeable future.
I agree with you.
If I could pipe in, this is Judah Levine. Robert is my father.
And grandson.
And this is Ami Levine. And he had the honor of practicing for his bar mitzvah on the Torah when we just brought it back to Israel. We live in Israel. So it was very special to us. We're sorry it's not going to be usable, but as my dad said, he's purchasing another Torah to be in the family. So that's special, kind of I said it's going to be in honor of this Torah. So it's very, and I actually traveled back with my dad when we brought it to Israel just now, and it was very it was a meaningful moment that the Torah has traveled a long way. It's been through a lot, and it was special to have it that Ami had the opportunity to practice on it. And I was only able to join late, but I did attend the meeting of the people who had lived in Divinishuk, and so this was probably in 2000 or 2001. And it was really quite a group of quite elderly people. So I don't have much to report, but they were very, when I said I was Levine from Divinishuk, they certainly knew the family name, so that was something too.
Nice to see you, Judah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's so inspirational when Abby showed me the picture of him with the Sefer Torah at Ben Gurion Airport. It almost took my breath away to, first of all, to see anything from Waterville make it to the land of Israel is pretty amazing, right? It was very exciting. And, that Torah, there are teachings that Torahs are almost like human beings in a way. It's kind of, fuzzy halacha, it's fuzzy Jewish law that you can count a Sefer Torah in a minyan. I don't really hold by that. But there is something that a Torah has a life, much like a human being. And so to see, this little Sefer Torah make it from Lithuania to Boston to, tucked away in our ark in Waterville, Maine, and we pull it out every Simchas Torah, to know that it reached Eretz Israel, I thought to myself, what must your ancestors, your great grandparents have thought if somebody could go in a time machine and say, one day this Sefer Torah will go with one of your descendants, not just to a place called Waterville, Maine, but will go to a Jewish country that has been established in the land of Israel, and where your descendants are citizens, right? I mean, that it's pretty amazing when you just take a moment to take stock of that journey. Regardless of the kashrut of the scroll, the history and the story that is within it really retains a sense of kedusha, a sense of holiness. And when we take stock of how long it's been around and how far it's traveled through the story of an American Jewish family, it's quite amazing.
So I just mentioned that my son Judah, his Hebrew name is Yehuda, which is the same as my grandfather who brought the Sefer Torah over with his wife Razel.
So it's really gorgeous, and this lineage is really incredible. And I just want to say thank you so much to the Levine family, that we think about you every time I take out that Sefer Torah. I think of you, and I think of the story of the smuggling of that Sefer Torah that Avi, your sister Ida Joyce, has told me on several occasions. So that story is associated with that scroll for me so intensely, and the gift of being rooted in a certain place, right? There's the land of Israel, which is a sense of rootedness, but also most American Jews don't have the sense of rootedness in a place like the Levines have in Waterville. That's unique, right? Most American Jews, when we think about demographics, they might have stories about Boston and the Lower East Side, and then they move to suburbs. And there isn't that sense of your family being rooted in a specific place and really building the infrastructure for an entire Jewish community that still exists and is still functional today. That's a small town story that is specific to Waterville. And all of us, even though the Jewish community looks different in many respects today than it did even 50 or 60 years ago, we're all the beneficiaries of that work, right? Of every Torah, of every mikvah, of every board meeting. We wouldn't have the privilege of being here today, keeping Jewish life alive in Waterville, if it weren't for the really heroic efforts of those founding families. So I really want to express a lot of gratitude to you and to everybody on this call, that work is not unacknowledged. It is it's very much we stand on the shoulders of giants in that respect, right? So I want to give a toda rabah. Abi, is there any final thoughts or words that you want to offer anybody else here?
I just want to say that I'm going to try to post on the chat, although I guess it's going to go away. If people want to watch the full video of my father, which is about less than 20 minutes, you get a flavor of his life.
Absolutely.
How are we going to watch that, Bob?
I'll send the link, and then you click on it.
Okay.
It's on YouTube, unless they censor it. They're into censoring these days.
Well, yes, Barbara Leopold. So I can post, additionally, I have these links as well. I can post them to the Beth Israel Facebook page.
Okay.
The other thing that I will do is this entire program has been recorded on the cloud. So it's going to be recorded to my cloud account through Colby College. So anybody who wants to pass this program along to anybody who couldn't be here today, anybody who has that link can watch this program. And along with that email, I'll include the links of Louis Lester Levine talking about the story of the Sefer Torah and the mikvah. I had no idea there was a mikvah in Waterville. That's amazing. I missed that previously.
Well, you learned something.
I'm glad. Yeah, absolutely.
That's the whole point.
Rachel, you have to give people permission to what's it called? To
Open that.
record the chat. If you want, if he's going to put it in the chat and people want to save the chat, I guess that's what it's called. You have to give permission for that.
Okay, will do. Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
We'll find
And
the links.
Shavua Tov.
Shavua tov.
Yes, I will send links. Yes, I will send links to everybody here, and I'm going to send the links to Abby, so you can also be in touch with him if you want the links to this video or to YouTube. But again, a hearty and a heartfelt toda rabah to Abby and to the Levines for sharing this story, and keeping us connected through storytelling to the story of our Sefer Torah. So to everybody, Shavua Tov, wherever you may be, from Israel to Boston to Maine, wherever you are, may everybody stay healthy and happy and connected. And I will see you all soon. Shavua Tov, everyone.
Thank you.
Toda
Thank
rabah.
you. Thank
Toda
you.
rabah.
Thank you.
So I posted the links
In the chat.
in the chat.
Let me see if I can find them. If not, Abby, I have them as well, or I'll email
Okay.
you for them, and I can send them out as well. I have most
Okay.
folks'
Great.
email addresses.
How do we get the chat again?
I don't. Yeah.
I'd like a copy of all of this too.
So if you can, Laura,
Uh-huh.
if you can send your Abby, make sure that your chat went to everybody in meeting. And
I
Laura,
think it did.
I don't
I think it
think
did.
you did. Okay,
I just
I
did
don't
it.
see
Check. You can check.
I don't see it.
I don't see it either.
What is this? Oh, it's to Marilyn. I'm sorry.
Marilyn's my mom. I can
Hold on. Oh,
meet
let's see.
everybody.
How do you say all? How do you say all?
So
Everyone.
at the
Oh,
bottom,
everyone. Here we go. Okay, here we go. Send it again. All right, there it goes. Okay.
Fabulous.
All right.
And Abby, I don't know if you know this, but that Judah and I share a close friend, Seth Galina.
Oh, we know Seth.
So
You get
Seth-
married, right? Is he the
Yes.
last one to get married or the first?
Well, that's his brother, Isaac. But
Isaac just got married.
Isaac just got married. His brother, Seth, is
Yeah, I
married
know.
to Cindy Pupko, who's one of my best friends.
Oh, a Pupko? He married a Pupko?
Yes.
We
So
have Pupkos here in Modine.
yeah, I know. Hindi, who's in New York, is one of my closest.
This is Rabbi Gerald Gold. This is Rabbi Gerald Goldstein. I was a former rabbi of Waterville, Maine.
Sorry about that.
That's A-okay. So I'm just gonna, Abby, I'll send you all that information, and people can also be in touch with me, R. Isaac.
For your information, Rabbi Goldstein was living in Modine when I moved here.
Really?
And he was at my grandson's bris, and that's when we made that video of his. The one who's having the bar mitzvah.
That's interesting. Wow. You know,
Small world.
Rabbi Fairman, I met in Israel. I don't know if you remember him.
So I'm checking out of Rami Levy, you know, the big
Yeah.
grocery store. And this cashier starts blabbering in Hebrew. I don't know what she's talking about. So I said, English. Oh, she said, okay. She says, she asked me, where are you from? I said, I'm from Maine. She said, oh, I'm from Maine. I said, where are you from? She said, I'm from Waterville, Maine. She was Rabbi Fairman's daughter.
Oh my goodness.
You know the other person in Israel from Waterville, grew up in Waterville?
Who?
Joan Chestner.
I know her name. I know the Chestner name from the Yortzeit list.
Right.
My only connection.
None of them are in Waterville anymore. But Joan married an Israeli, and she's spent her adult life here. She's still here.
Where in Israel is she?
Kizaria. They do all right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the Fairmans were in Beersheba. No, they were in Kiryat Gat. I went to their apartment in Kiryat Gat, but they since moved to Shiloh.
Right.
So they're in a different part of Israel than Caesarea.
They try to keep in touch with my sister, Ida Joyce.
Yeah. So I have yet to visit them in Shiloh, but Kiryat Gat was much more doable because I go to Beersheba whenever I go down to Israel. Well, wonderful,
Okay.
Avi. Again, thank you so much. And
Alright.
I'll send the recording out to everybody.
Great.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody. Bye,
By the
cousin.
way, you realize if it weren't for COVID, we probably never would have done this.
That's very true. Because
Who
we would
knew,
have
who knew about Zoom? Did you know about
exactly, we
Zoom?
wouldn't have done a Zoom bagel brunch. There's no way. But this is lovely. I think it's really lovely. And I know that there are a lot of people who wanted to be here but couldn't make this time. So the recording will be really useful. And we can show it now forever, which is really great.
That's right. Okay.
All right. Shavua tov.
Bye.